Jackie, we first started to get some indication that something was amiss here when Hamas said, first of all in the afternoon, that the exchange of hostages was actually taking place in Gaza, but then soon after that rode back and said that there was a delay. In response, Israel said that if there wasn't a hostage release by midnight, the offensive would resume in Gaza. So what is going on here? It's not clear. All we're going on is statements from both sides. Hamas have said that the delay is down to a dispute over the number of humanitarian trucks getting into Gaza. They say there's fewer being allowed in than was in the original deal. They're also saying it's a dispute over the age of the Palestinian detainees that qualify for release. Israel, on their part, are saying that Hamas are moving the goalposts. They're saying this is psychological warfare designed to inflict pain on the family. There is a hope. A Qatari official flew into Israel today. The Qataris are the intermediaries here. There is a hope that the sort of physical presence of the Qataris on the ground will help, but we don't yet know. I guess there was perhaps a sense of hope built up after how smoothly things went yesterday, and let's hope that that is not a false hope. Ohad Munder hasn't seen his father for 49 days. Ohad's brother greets his mother and grandmother, also released yesterday. Little Ohad was abducted during a holiday visit to his grandparents at the Nir Oz kibbutz. The reunion in one of the special hospital units set up for hostages near Tel Aviv. What a difference a day makes. In a video released by Hamas yesterday, we saw Ohad, who's 9, Karen, his mother, and Ruth, his grandmother, handed over to the Red Cross in Gaza. Karen's brother was murdered on the 7th. As you'd expect, most of the hostages in the video looked frightened and disorientated. Others, though, stoical. 78-year-old Margalit Moses even manages a wave. And this is Yafa Adar, who's 85, the oldest of the hostages taken. The Holocaust survivor is a founder of the Nir Oz kibbutz. 80 people are thought to have been kidnapped from there, nearly quarter of the small community's population. The video of her being paraded through Gaza in a golf cart became one of those terrifying totemic images of the attack. The family released these pictures of her today. Yafa's grandson, Tamir, though, is still thought to be in the hands of Hamas. It's difficult to glean much about the pattern of releases from the profile of the people let go yesterday, but some interesting detail. Hannah Katsir is 77. It had been reported that she'd been killed during an Israeli airstrike while she was being held by Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The 10 hostages from Thailand, agricultural workers and carers in Israel, were freed because of a separate deal done between Thailand and Iran. The Truce stopwatch started again this morning as it did yesterday. The largest consignment of aid trucks since the beginning of the war arrived into Gaza today. The effect of the deal felt almost immediately, from people's demeanour to the prices in the markets of Han Yunis, southern Gaza.
I feel that the situation is much better than it was before. We're starting to get access to vegetables that we couldn't find before the pause. Now it's much easier to travel and people are able to buy things. Items are also cheaper now. There was extremely limited access to items before, so the cost was high. It's far easier to get things now than it was during the war.
The truce holding has implications on the diplomatic front also. The longer it continues, the more pressure can be applied on Benjamin Netanyahu by the international community to rein in his bombardment of civilian areas in Gaza.
I've encouraged the Prime Minister to focus on trying to reduce the number of casualties while he is attempting to eliminate Hamas, which is a legitimate objective he has.
Tonight, gunfire outside the Offa prison on the West Bank. One of the injured carried through the crowd to an ambulance. Another rushed for treatment on a stretcher. A large crowd had gathered awaiting the release of Palestinian prisoners and detainees, and a reminder that a delay in this process is another moment during which the whole agreement could unravel.
Paraic O'Brien reporting, and just before we came on air, I spoke to Mansour Schumann in Khan Yunis in Gaza. He's a Palestinian-Canadian national who could have left Gaza with his wife and children, but decided to stay, he says, to help in whatever way he can. I began by asking him what the situation was like where he is at the moment.
Today is the second day of the ceasefire agreement, and yesterday everyone had a feeling of happiness, great joy, relief. Thousands of people around me who were displaced tried to return to their homes, whether it's in the south, in the west, in the east, and even some tried going back to their homes in the north, in Gaza City, in Jabalia, and Beit Lahiya, and Beit Hanun. And today, lots of them came back, and many of them were very sad to see that their homes were unfortunately demolished, to learn that they've lost neighbors, relatives. But in general, there's a feeling of disappointment and sadness by many who have returned now to live back in the hospital here, in the refugee school centers, on the streets, in their temporary tents.
You talk about that the feeling that people have had, you know, it's gone from joy to sadness pretty quickly, but practically speaking, what difference is this temporary ceasefire making?
One of the reasons for the joy as well was the release of 39 Palestinian women and children who were imprisoned in Israeli jails for the past 2 years and released yesterday. Unfortunately, today, as you heard, it seems that there has been a disagreement between Hamas and Israel, and there hasn't been any prisoner exchange or release from both sides. So there is also a general feeling that the war might start again. So there is a fear again of uncertainty with the airstrikes that might come in together with land invasion.
Obviously, one aspect of this truce agreement was to get aid back into Gaza. Have you seen that aid coming through? Has it made a difference to your ability to get food, to get clean water?
So it's been 50 days since the start of this conflict, and Gaza used to receive at least 500 trucks every day. And we had only 1,100 trucks enter before this ceasefire agreement. And many of these 1,100 trucks either had 2 or 3 pallets only, had expired goods, expired food, had things that we didn't really need, like gloves, like masks, like coffin wraps for the dead. Yesterday, 196 trucks were let in, together with 4 fuel tanks. So that was definitely helpful. But again, 200 trucks versus 20 or 25,000 is very minute. And no, we haven't seen any of it here.
I mean, can I just ask you finally a very personal question? I mean, you took a decision not to leave with your family. Your wife and 5 children were able to leave earlier in the month. You decided to stay. I mean, given everything that's happened, given everything we've seen, I just wonder whether you regret that decision at all, whether you feel nervous about the future for yourself.
I wouldn't have changed it for the world. And my name is still in the Rafah border. I can still leave if I want. And honestly, it's a privilege. It's an honor for me doing what I'm doing here, trying to serve my people, explaining to the people what's going on here.
Mansour Schumann, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Well, here in London, tens of thousands of people were again on the streets calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Ahead of the march, the Metropolitan Police issued leaflets warning people about words or images that could break the law. Jane Deeth reports.
Free, free, Palestine! Free, free, Palestine!
Tens of thousands of people came out in the cold to call for a permanent ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict. This was the first march in London since the Armistice Day protest, and there was a new approach from the Metropolitan Police, which has come in for criticism for how it's handled previous demonstrations. For the first time, the Metropolitan Police has been moved to hand out these leaflets. It says to clarify what would cause offence and land people in the cells. It talks about words or images that are racist or incite hatred, support Hamas, or promote acts of terrorism. The force will also have trained spotters along the route looking out for banners or chants which cross the line, although it has not been explicit about which phrases it believes could break the law.
From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
That chant is now the subject of fierce debate. Its defenders say it calls for the end of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank, but some, including the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, have said it calls for the destruction of Israel.
We don't welcome anybody to attend our march who's bringing anything that we would define as racist and offensive and not in accordance with the principles on which we're marching.
Do you welcome those who chant, you know the chant I mean? If they chant that chant, are they welcome?
From the river to the sea?
I do.
Absolutely. And we will be chanting it ourselves. And I speak as a Palestinian, and the vast majority of Palestinians use that chant.
You don't find that racist or inciting hate?
No, it's a legitimate chant. We don't really tolerate it. We encourage people.
Have you had any guidance from the Met as to whether they would consider that to fall within racism?
They have never indicated to us, and they would be acting outside of the law, I would argue, if they tried to assert that chant was in any way an expression of anti-Semitism or a denial of the rights of another people.
The Metropolitan Police told us officers judging what's unlawful consider the context. And on a protest like this, singing From the River to the Sea probably wouldn't be an offence. Have you seen this leaflet today?
Yes.
What do you think about it?
I think it's good that the police are giving it out because we need to get our message across without being violent or anything like that.
We're still promoting human rights. We're promoting the preserving life. And what's wrong with that? And we're doing it peacefully.
If you get like a few, small minority of idiots that turn up and basically, chant whatever they want, that's the job of the police. They're there to enforce the law. But generally, on the whole, if you look at the general public, they're well behaved.
There were a small number of arrests, which the Met was quick to publicise. It posted this video online showing officers arresting a man on suspicion of supporting a proscribed organisation. 5 people were arrested over signs or material featuring Nazi symbols. And at a separate protest by the Islamist group Hizb ut-Tahrir at the Egyptian embassy, police say they arrested 2 women holding offensive signs.
Well, back to our main story now. The delay in the second round of hostage releases due to take place in Gaza today. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Paraic O'Brien joins us again from Tel Aviv. Paraic, what can you tell us?
Well, Jackie, a lot has happened since we last spoke 25 minutes ago. First up, the Egyptians said that they had managed to iron out what was delaying this deal. They're one of the intermediaries here. Then the Qataris, they didn't confirm that either way, but in the last few minutes, the Israeli media is reporting that those problems have been solved. The Israeli government, according to the Israeli media, saying that the deal is going ahead and that there may be extra foreign hostages released. What's at stake here? You saw some of those images earlier in my report of large groups of angry people, kicking off outside the prison where some of the releases of Palestinians was going to take place. People get angrier and angrier the longer this is delayed. And that is before we even start to talk about those families waiting all around Israel and Tel Aviv, where we are, waiting for news of their loved ones. How agonizing must this delay be for them?
Paraic, thanks very much for giving us that update and that story. Clearly moving